I arrived at my childhood home for Thanksgiving dinner after working double shifts all week to help pay my mother's medical bills. The entire extended family was already seated around the dining table when my mother, Gloria, suddenly pointed directly at me and declared loudly that I did not deserve a seat at this table because I had been nothing but a disappointment. The room fell silent. Every pair of eyes stared at me as humiliation burned through my chest, but something inside me finally snapped after years of taking this abuse. I stood up slowly, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from 28 years of suppressed anger finally reaching its breaking point. The silence in the room was deafening as I looked directly at my mother's face. "Then stop eating the food I pay for," I said, my voice steady and clear. The collective gasp from my family members was audible. My Uncle Frank dropped his fork with a clatter against his plate. My cousin Jessica's mouth fell open in shock. My brother Marcus leaned forward in his chair, his eyebrows furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about, Arlene?" Gloria demanded, her face flushing red with indignation. "I don't need your charity." I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, opening my banking application with deliberate movements. "Really, Mom?" "Because according to my bank statements, I've transferred $8,467 to your account over the past 8 months. The room erupted in whispered conversations. Uncle Frank stood up from his seat, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the table. $8,000, Gloria, you told us you were managing fine on disability payments." "She's lying," Gloria snapped, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. Sweat beads were forming on her forehead, despite the cool November air filtering through the windows. I scrolled through my phone and began reading aloud. October 15th, transfer to Gloria Henderson, $650. September 23rd, transfer to Gloria Henderson, $720. August 18th, transfer to Gloria Henderson, $815. I looked up at the stunned faces around the table. Should I continue? Because I have 7 more months of records just like this. My cousin Jessica, who had always been Gloria's golden child, stared at me with wide eyes. "Arlene, why didn't you tell anyone you were helping with finances?" "Because your aunt specifically asked me not to," I replied, turning my phone screen toward the table. "Here are the text messages where she begged me to keep her money problems secret from all of you." Gloria lunged toward my phone, but Marcus intercepted her hand. "Mom, let us see." I began reading the messages in chronological order. July 3rd. Mom writes, "Arlene, please don't tell the family about the foreclosure notice. I'm too embarrassed. Can you help with just this month's mortgage payment?" July 15th. "Thank you, sweetheart. You saved my home. Please promise you won't mention this to Marcus or Jessica." The color drained from Gloria's face as I continued reading. Uncle Frank sat back down heavily, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. August 2nd. I continued. Mom writes, "The bank is threatening foreclosure again. I know you're struggling too, but you're my only hope. I can't lose your father's house." Jessica covered her mouth with her hand. "Mom, you told us the house was paid off years ago." "It was," Gloria whispered, but her voice was barely audible now. I scrolled to more recent messages. September 10th. "Arlene, I need $900 this month. The property taxes are overdue and they're adding penalties. I promise I'll pay you back when my settlement comes through." "What settlement?" Marcus asked, his voice rising. Gloria's shoulders sagged as she realized her carefully constructed lies were crumbling. "There is no settlement." I looked around the table at my family members, their faces displaying a mixture of shocked confusion and dawning understanding. I work 62 hours every week between my day job at the insurance office and my evening shifts at the diner. I live in a 400-square-foot studio apartment that costs me $1,400 a month because it's the only thing I can afford after sending most of my paycheck here. Uncle Frank shook his head slowly. Arlene, why would you sacrifice so much without telling us we could have helped? Because she made me promise not to burden the family, I replied, showing them another message. October 5th. Mom writes, don't tell Frank about the money. You know how he worries and Jessica is planning her wedding. Marcus has his own family to support. You're the only one who's free to help. The irony of that last statement hung in the air like smoke. Free to help. As if my financial struggles and personal sacrifices meant nothing because I wasn't married with children. Gloria finally found her voice again. You're taking those messages out of context. I never forced you to do anything. I scrolled to the most recent exchange from just 3 days earlier. November 19th. Mom writes, I know Thanksgiving will be expensive, but can you cover the grocery costs? I want everything to be perfect for the family. I'll make it up to you somehow. Jessica gasped. Mom, you told me you had already bought all the food. I did buy it, Gloria protested weakly. With my money, I said firmly. Every single item on this table, from the 22-pound turkey to the imported cranberry sauce that you specifically requested, was purchased with funds I transferred to your account on Monday morning. The weight of this revelation settled over the dining room like a heavy blanket. Marcus pushed back his chair and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his head. Jessica stared down at her plate, as if seeing the food for the first time. Uncle Frank's voice was quiet but filled with emotion when he finally spoke. Arlene, honey, how long has this been going on? The mortgage payment started 8 months ago, but the smaller amounts have been happening for almost 2 years, I admitted. Utility bills, car repairs, medical copays, prescription costs. She always said it was temporary just until she got back on her feet. Gloria's facade was cracking completely now. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but they seemed more like tears of frustration than genuine remorse. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The medical bills, the house maintenance, trying to keep up appearances for the family. Keeping up appearances. I repeated slowly, letting the words sink in. Is that what this dinner is about, Mom? Keeping up appearances while I work myself into exhaustion to pay for your lifestyle. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of the grandfather clock in the hallway chiming 5:30. Everything felt surreal, as if I was watching this confrontation happen to someone else. Jessica finally looked up from her plate, tears glistening in her eyes. Arlene, I had no idea. When Mom invited us for Thanksgiving, she seemed so excited about cooking for everyone. She kept talking about how she wanted to spoil us. She did spoil you, I said softly, with my money, my sacrifice, and my silence. Gloria wiped her eyes with her napkin and straightened her shoulders, clearly preparing for a counterattack. Well, if you're so generous with money, Arlene, where have you been when I needed emotional support? You never call, you never visit unless there's some crisis. The accusation hit like a physical blow, but I had been expecting this deflection. Gloria always twisted situations to make herself the victim when confronted with uncomfortable truths. Never visit, I repeated, reaching back into my purse. That's interesting because I have something else to show everyone. I pulled out a small appointment card folder that I always kept with me. The worn edges and multiple stamps told their own story of frequent use. These are appointment cards from Mercy General Hospital Dialysis Center, I announced, spreading them across the table like playing cards. Every Saturday morning for the past 6 months, I've driven 3 hours from my apartment to pick you up, sit with you through 4-hour dialysis sessions, then drive you home. Marcus spun around from the window so fast he nearly knocked over a plant. Dialysis, Mom, what are you talking about? Gloria's face went ashen. Arlene, you promised you wouldn't tell them about that. Just like I promised not to tell them about the money. I asked, my voice gaining strength. How many secrets am I supposed to keep for you, Mom? I pulled out my phone again and opened my text messages. October 7th. Mom writes, please don't mention the kidney problems to the family yet. I'm not ready to worry them. It's not that serious anyway. Jessica stood up so abruptly that her chair toppled backward. Kidney problems, Mom, how serious is not serious? It's nothing, Gloria stammered. Just some minor issues. The doctors are being overly cautious. I looked directly at my brother, who had gone completely pale. Marcus, she's in stage 4 kidney failure. Her kidneys are functioning at less than 15% capacity. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the neighbor's dog barking 2 houses away. Uncle Frank gripped the table edge so tightly his knuckles turned white. Stage 4. Marcus repeated slowly as if testing the words. Mom, that's life-threatening. The doctors say she needs a kidney transplant within the next 18 months, or she'll need permanent dialysis for the rest of her life. I continued. I've been taking her to appointments with nephrologists, transplant coordinators, and social workers who help families navigate the donation process. Jessica picked up her fallen chair but remained standing, her hands shaking. Why would you hide this from us? We're your family. We have a right to know. Gloria's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't want to be a burden. A burden. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You didn't want to be a burden, so instead, you made me your sole support system while painting me as a disappointment to everyone else. I pulled out another stack of papers from my purse. These are information packets about kidney donation that I've been studying for months. Compatibility requirements, surgical procedures, recovery timelines, long-term health implications for donors. Uncle Frank leaned forward, squinting at the papers. Arlene, you've been researching becoming a donor. Not just researching, I said quietly. I completed the preliminary testing 3 weeks ago. The collective intake of breath from my family was audible. Gloria's eyes widened in panic, as if she realized her carefully guarded secret was about to be completely exposed. The blood test, tissue typing, psychological evaluation, medical history review. I continued listing each step methodically. I spent 4 days at the transplant center going through every possible screening to determine if I could donate one of my kidneys to save my mother's life. Marcus sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. Jesus Christ, Arlene! You were going to have surgery to give Mom a kidney. I confirmed, until she rejected the offer. Gloria shot to her feet, knocking over her water glass. That's not what happened. I never rejected anything. I pulled out a letter from the transplant center and held it up for everyone to see. This is a letter from Dr. Patricia Williamson at the Kidney Transplant Center dated November 15th. It confirms that I am a perfect 6-antigen match for my mother, which gives the transplant a 96% success rate. Jessica's voice was barely audible. Perfect match. The best possible compatibility, I explained. Dr. Williamson said it was like winning the genetic lottery. The letter also states that the recipient, my mother, declined to move forward with the transplant procedure at this time. Uncle Frank stood up slowly, his face flushed with anger. Gloria, your daughter was willing to give you one of her organs and you said no. It wasn't that simple, Gloria protested, but her voice lacked conviction. I opened my text messages one more time. November 15th, the same day as Dr. Williamson's letter, Mom writes, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I can't accept a kidney from you. You're too selfish and irresponsible to follow through with the commitment required for donation. I'll wait for someone more reliable. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Jessica covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. Marcus stared at Gloria with an expression I had never seen before, as if he was looking at a stranger. Too selfish, Marcus repeated slowly. Mom, she was going to give you a kidney. The donation process requires extensive follow-up care, Gloria said defensively. Medical appointments, lifestyle changes, ongoing monitoring. I know how Arlene is with commitment. How I am with commitment? I asked, my voice rising for the first time. I've committed to working 2 jobs to pay your bills. I've committed to driving 6 hours round trip every weekend to sit with you during dialysis. I've committed to keeping your medical secrets even when it meant lying to my own family. Uncle Frank walked around the table and stood directly in front of Gloria. What kind of mother calls her daughter selfish for offering to save her life? You don't understand the complexity of the situation, Gloria insisted, but she couldn't meet anyone's eyes. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in my purse. There's something else you all should know. The reason I was so eager to donate quickly wasn't just because of Mom's condition. I've been experiencing some health issues myself lately. The room fell silent again. Marcus looked up from his hands with fresh concern. Nothing life-threatening, I assured him quickly. But my insurance situation is complicated, and I wanted to complete the donation process while I still had full coverage for the surgery and recovery. Jessica wiped her eyes with her sleeve. What kind of health issues? Stress-related problems, high blood pressure, irregular heartbeat, chronic fatigue. My doctor says it's what happens when you work 60-plus-hour weeks for months on end while dealing with significant emotional stress. Gloria's face crumpled, but I couldn't tell if it was from guilt or self-pity. The irony, I continued, is that the stress causing my health problems is largely from trying to support Mom financially and emotionally while keeping her secrets from all of you. And now those same health issues might eventually disqualify me from being a donor if they get worse. Uncle Frank shook his head in disbelief. So let me understand this correctly. Arlene has been sacrificing her health, her finances, and her weekends to help you, Gloria. She's willing to undergo major surgery to save your life. And your response is to call her selfish and tell her she doesn't deserve to sit at your table. When Gloria didn't respond, Uncle Frank continued. A table that she paid for, food that she bought, in a house that she's keeping from foreclosure. The truth was finally out in the open, and there was no going back. Gloria slumped back into her chair, her face a mixture of defiance and desperation. You're all ganging up on me. I'm the one who's sick. I'm the one facing kidney failure. But somehow I'm the villain here. The manipulation in her voice was so familiar that I almost felt myself wavering, almost felt the old guilt creeping back in. But Uncle Frank's wife Dorothy, who had been quietly observing from the corner of the dining room, suddenly spoke up. Actually, Gloria, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with the family, Dorothy said, walking to her purse by the front door. I've been concerned about some recent legal documents that have come to my attention. My stomach dropped. Dorothy worked as a paralegal at a law firm downtown, and her serious tone suggested this wasn't going to be good news. What kind of legal documents? Marcus asked warily. Dorothy returned with a manila folder and placed it on the table next to the scattered appointment cards. 3 months ago, I received a call from Peterson and Associates asking me to witness some document signatures. When I arrived at their office, Gloria was there with several estate planning papers. Gloria's eyes widened with panic. Dorothy, that was confidential legal business? It was, Dorothy agreed, until I realized what was actually happening. She opened the folder and pulled out photocopies of official-looking documents. These are copies of the original will your father created before he passed away, compared to the amended version that Gloria filed last month. Jessica leaned forward to examine the papers. What kind of amendments? Significant ones, Dorothy replied grimly. In your father's original will, Arlene was designated to receive 40% of his estate, including the house half of his life insurance policy and your grandmother's complete jewelry collection. I felt the blood drain from my face. Grandmother's jewelry was supposed to come to me. She specifically requested it, Dorothy confirmed. She told your father that since you were the only granddaughter, she wanted you to have her engagement ring, her pearl necklaces, and the diamond bracelet that belonged to her mother. Marcus stood up and grabbed one of the documents. What does the new will say? Dorothy's voice was steady but filled with barely controlled anger. In the amended version, Arlene's inheritance share has been reduced to 5%. The house goes entirely to Gloria for her lifetime, then to Marcus. The jewelry collection has been transferred to Jessica. The life insurance proceeds are split between Marcus and Jessica, with nothing allocated for Arlene. The silence was deafening. I stared at the papers in Marcus's hands, trying to process what I was hearing. But that's not the worst part, Dorothy continued. The amendment includes a detailed addendum explaining why Arlene's inheritance was reduced. According to this document, Gloria told the attorney that Arlene has been struggling with substance abuse issues and cannot be trusted with significant financial assets. Jessica's gasp was audible across the room. Substance abuse? Arlene doesn't even drink alcohol. I reached into my purse once more and pulled out a folded paper that I had been carrying for weeks. This is a comprehensive drug screening report required by the Transplant Center for potential kidney donors. It tests for everything from illegal drugs to prescription abuse to alcohol dependency. I handed the report to Marcus. The results show absolutely no traces of any substances in my system. I haven't had so much as a beer in over 6 months because I've been preparing for surgery. Marcus scanned the document quickly. This is dated 2 weeks ago. The results are completely clean. Dorothy nodded, which means Gloria filed legal documents containing false information about Arlene's character and mental state in order to justify stealing her inheritance. Gloria jumped to her feet again. I wasn't stealing anything. I was protecting the family assets from someone who might squander them. Protecting them? I asked incredulously. By taking them for yourself? By ensuring they stayed in the family, Gloria shot back. You live alone in some tiny apartment. You don't have children to think about. Marcus and Jessica have families to support. Uncle Frank slammed his hand on the table so hard that several glasses jumped. Gloria Arlene is family. She's your daughter. She's also the daughter who never calls, never visits, never shows any interest in family events. Gloria countered, her voice rising to match Uncle Frank's volume. I laughed bitterly. I wonder why I don't call Mom. Maybe because every conversation turns into a guilt trip about money or demands for more financial help. Maybe because you've spent years telling me I'm a disappointment while secretly stealing my inheritance. Dorothy pulled out another document. There's more. The legal filing also includes a statement claiming that Arlene has expressed no interest in maintaining family property or continuing family traditions. That's completely false, I said, my voice shaking with anger. I've been begging you for years to let me help renovate Dad's workshop in the garage. I wanted to restore his tools and maybe use the space for woodworking projects like he taught me when I was little. Marcus's face softened slightly. You wanted to use Dad's workshop? I still have the plans I drew up, I replied. But every time I mentioned it, Mom said the space was being used for storage, and it wouldn't be appropriate to disturb Dad's things. Gloria's voice was defensive. That workshop contains precious memories. Memories that apparently don't include me, I said quietly. According to these legal documents, I have no interest in family property or traditions. Dorothy held up the final document in her folder. The amendment also transfers ownership of your father's 1967 Mustang from Arlene to Marcus. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Dad's Mustang was supposed to be mine. He specifically designated it for you in his original will, Dorothy confirmed. He wrote a personal note saying that since you were the one who spent every weekend helping him restore it, you should be the one to inherit it. Tears started flowing down my cheeks as I remembered all those Saturday afternoons in the garage learning about engines and bodywork, while Dad patiently taught me everything he knew about cars. Marcus walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. "Arlene, I had no idea. Mom told me Dad wanted me to have the car because I'm the son." "I've been paying for storage on that car for 3 years," Gloria said defensively. "It's expensive to maintain a classic vehicle." "You've been paying for storage with money I've been sending you." I realized the full scope of the betrayal finally hitting me. "I've been unknowingly paying to store my own inheritance that you stole from me." Jessica looked horrified. "Mom, how could you do this? Arlene has been supporting you financially while you've been stealing her inheritance behind her back." Gloria's composure finally cracked completely. "I did what I thought was best for this family. Arlene has made it clear over the years that she doesn't want to be tied down with family responsibilities." "What I made clear," I said, standing up and facing her directly, "is that I wanted to be treated with the same respect and consideration that you show Marcus and Jessica. I wanted to be included in family decisions instead of being told what you think is best for me." Dorothy carefully gathered the legal documents back into her folder. "There's one more thing everyone should know. These inheritance changes can be challenged in court, especially given the false information about substance abuse. A good attorney could argue that Gloria committed fraud by making material misrepresentations to the estate lawyer." The implications of that statement settled over the room like a dark cloud. Gloria could potentially face legal consequences for her actions, but as I looked around at my family members' shocked and sympathetic faces, I realized that the money and possessions weren't what hurt the most. It was the systematic erasure of my place in the family, the deliberate destruction of my connection to my father's memory, and the casual cruelty of stealing from someone who had been sacrificing everything to help. Jessica suddenly burst into tears, not the quiet tears she had been shedding earlier, but deep, gut-wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. "I can't do this anymore," she cried, covering her face with her hands. "I feel so guilty. I felt sick about this for months." Marcus immediately moved to comfort her, but she waved him away. "No, you don't understand," Jessica said, wiping her nose with her napkin. "Mom, I have to tell them about the house." Gloria's face turned white as paper. "Jessica, don't." "Tell us what about the house?" Uncle Frank demanded. Jessica took a shaky breath. 3 months ago, Mom offered me $15,000 for the down payment on my new house. She said it came from selling Dad's auto repair business. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Dad's business was sold. "That's what I thought," Jessica continued through her tears. "Mom showed me papers that looked like a business sale agreement. She said the shop wasn't making money anymore, and it was better to sell it while they could still get something for it." Marcus frowned. "I never heard anything about selling Dad's shop." Dorothy opened her folder again and pulled out yet another document. "That's because it wasn't sold. I checked the county business records this morning after Gloria mentioned it. Henderson Auto Repair is still an active business with the same ownership structure that your father established." My hands started shaking. "What ownership structure?" "According to your father's business filing, Arlene owns 40% of Henderson Auto Repair, Marcus owns 30%, and Gloria retained 30%, Dorothy explained. The room spun slightly as I processed this information. "I own part of Dad's business." "You always have," Dorothy confirmed. "Your father restructured the ownership when you turned 21, but apparently no one ever told you." I looked directly at Gloria, who was now slumped in her chair like a deflated balloon. "You've known for 7 years that I own part of the business. It was supposed to be a surprise for when you got married or had children," Gloria mumbled. "Something to help you settle down and start a family. So instead, you've been collecting my share of the profits while telling me the business was worthless." I said, my voice deadly calm. Uncle Frank walked to the kitchen and returned with the cordless phone. Frank runs the day-to-day operations of the shop. Let's call him and get some answers. Uncle Frank, no, Gloria pleaded. This isn't the time or place. But Uncle Frank was already dialing. Frank, it's me. Yes, I know it's Thanksgiving, but I need to ask you about the auto shop profits. What, no? I'm here with the whole family. Yes, she's here too. I could hear Frank's voice through the phone speaker but couldn't make out the words. Uncle Frank's expression grew increasingly grim as the conversation continued. How much? Uncle Frank asked. Every month for how long? Jesus Christ, Frank. No, she needs to know. Yes, we'll deal with Gloria later. Uncle Frank hung up the phone and turned to face me. Arlene Henderson Auto Repair has been generating approximately $1,200 per month in profit distributions. Your 40% share comes to $480 monthly. I did quick math in my head. That's almost $6,000 per year. Frank says the business has been profitable for the past 2.5 years since they expanded into hybrid vehicle repairs. Uncle Frank continued. Your total share of undistributed profits is approximately $14,800. Jessica sobbed harder. Oh my God, Arlene, I bought my house with your money. Frank also mentioned that someone has been picking up Arlene's profit checks every month. Uncle Frank added, his voice ice cold. Want to guess who that was, Gloria? Gloria couldn't meet anyone's eyes. I was keeping the money safe for her. Safe where? Marcus demanded. Because it's sure as hell not in any account with Arlene's name on it. I felt numb, like I was watching all of this happen to someone else. How much total are we talking about? Uncle Frank consulted the notes he had scribbled during his phone call. $14,800 in business profits plus Frank says there was a $22,000 insurance settlement from the equipment damage last spring. Your share of that would have been $8,800. $23,600. I calculated automatically. You've stolen almost $24,000 from me over the past 2 years. I didn't steal anything, Gloria protested weakly. I was managing the money until you were ready to handle it responsibly. Responsibly, I repeated, standing up so fast that my chair tipped backward. I've been working 60-hour weeks and living in poverty while you collected my business profits and used them to maintain your lifestyle. Dorothy consulted another paper from her folder. Frank also mentioned that Gloria has been telling him the shop needs to expand its insurance coverage due to increased liability risks. The additional premiums have been approximately $300 monthly. Insurance that I've been unknowingly paying for with my own profit distributions, I realized. Uncle Frank nodded grimly. Frank says he questioned the insurance increases, but Gloria told him it was necessary to protect the business assets for the family. Protecting my assets. I laughed bitterly, by stealing my money to pay for insurance on my own business. Jessica looked up from her hands, her face streaked with tears. Arlene, I swear I didn't know. If I had realized the money belonged to you, I never would have accepted it. I believe you, I said quietly. But Mom knew exactly where that money came from. Marcus walked over to the window again, his hands clenched into fists. Mom, you've been stealing from Arlene for years. The inheritance, the business profits, probably other things we don't even know about yet. I've been trying to hold this family together, Gloria said, her voice rising with desperation. Do you think it's easy being a widow? Do you think it's simple managing properties and businesses and medical bills all by yourself? You're not by yourself, I shot back. I've been helping you with everything. The difference is that I've been helping voluntarily while you've been stealing from me systematically. Uncle Frank held up his hand for silence. There's something else Frank mentioned that I think everyone needs to hear. The room fell quiet except for Jessica's occasional sniffles. Frank says he's been keeping detailed records of all the financial irregularities because he was getting suspicious about Gloria's explanations. Uncle Frank continued, "He has documentation of every profit distribution, every insurance payment, every business expense for the past 3 years." Gloria's eyes widened in panic. "Frank had no right to question my business decisions." "Frank had every right," Dorothy interjected, "because what you've been doing constitutes embezzlement. Taking money that legally belongs to another person, even if you're related, is still theft under state law." The legal implications were starting to become clear to everyone in the room. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was potentially criminal behavior. Furthermore, Dorothy continued, using false information to alter inheritance documents could constitute fraud. And if Arlene can prove that her financial support was obtained under false pretenses, that could be considered elder abuse in reverse or financial exploitation. I sat back down heavily overwhelmed by the scope of what had been happening. "You've been stealing from me for years, while I worked myself sick trying to support you." Marcus turned back from the window. "Arlene, how much money have you sent Mom in total? Not just the mortgage payments, but everything over the past few years." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, scrolling through months of transfers. "Give me a minute to calculate this." As I scrolled through the records, the numbers were staggering. Small amounts here and there for utilities, larger amounts for medical bills, regular monthly contributions for living expenses, and the recent large transfers for mortgage payments. Including the business profits that should have been coming to me, Mom has cost me approximately $68,000 over the past 2.5 years, I announced. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Jessica's gasp. $68,000, Marcus repeated slowly. "Arlene, you could have bought a house with that money. Or at least moved out of that studio apartment," Uncle Frank added. I looked around at my family members, seeing a mixture of shock, sympathy, and anger on their faces. But what struck me most was the realization that I had been living like a pauper while unknowingly funding a lifestyle that was being used to exclude me from my own family. The doorbell rang just as we were all processing the enormity of the financial betrayal. Uncle Frank went to answer it, while the rest of us sat in stunned silence around the dining table. "Arlene," a familiar voice called from the front hallway. "I hope it's okay that I came." My heart stopped. That was David's voice, my ex-husband whom I hadn't spoken to in over a year. "What the hell is he doing here?" I whispered to myself, but Gloria's expression told me everything I needed to know. David appeared in the doorway looking uncomfortable but determined. He was wearing the blue sweater I had bought him for Christmas 3 years ago, and his hair was longer than he used to keep it. "Hi, everyone," David said quietly. "Gloria, thank you for inviting me. I know this might be awkward, but I really needed to talk to Arlene." I turned to stare at my mother in disbelief. "You invited my ex-husband to Thanksgiving dinner without telling me—" "I thought it would be a nice surprise," Gloria said defensively. "You two were so good together. I've always hoped you might reconcile." "We're divorced, Mom. We've been divorced for over a year." David stepped further into the room, his expression serious. "Actually, Arlene, that's part of why I'm here. I need to apologize to you, and I need to do it in front of your family." Marcus stood up protectively. "David, I think you should leave. This isn't a good time." "Please," David said, holding up his hands. "I know the timing is terrible, but after what I learned about Gloria's involvement in our marriage, I couldn't wait any longer to make this right." A chill ran down my spine. "What are you talking about?" David pulled out his phone and looked directly at Gloria. "I'm talking about the lies you told me about Arlene cheating, the fabricated evidence you provided, the way you systematically destroyed our marriage." Gloria shot to her feet. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Really?" David asked, scrolling through his phone. Because I have screenshots of every text message you sent me over the course of 6 months. Messages where you told me Arlene was having multiple affairs with coworkers. My mouth fell open. What? David held up his phone, showing the screen to everyone at the table. March 15th of last year, Gloria texts me, "I'm worried about Arlene. She's been working late a lot, and I saw her having lunch with some man I didn't recognize. I think you should keep an eye on things." I felt like I was going to be sick. David, you can't believe I was cheating on you. I didn't want to believe it, David replied, his voice filled with regret. But Gloria was very convincing. She provided what seemed like solid evidence. He scrolled to another message. March 28th. I followed Arlene after work yesterday. She went to a hotel with that same man. I'm so sorry, David, but I thought you should know. That's impossible, I protested. I never went to any hotel with anyone. David nodded. I know that now, but at the time, Gloria showed me photos. What photos? Jessica asked, looking horrified. David showed his phone screen to the table. Pictures that appeared to show Arlene entering a hotel with a man. Pictures of her car in hotel parking lots. Even what looked like receipts from hotel room charges on her credit card. I stared at the images on his phone and my blood ran cold. Those photos are edited. That's not even me in most of them. I know, David said quietly. I hired a private investigator 3 months ago to try to get closure about our divorce. The investigator proved that all of Gloria's evidence was fabricated. Uncle Frank leaned forward. Fabricated how? Photo editing software to put Arlene's face on other women's bodies. Fake receipts created using hotel letterhead and Arlene's credit card information. Even fake text messages that appeared to be from Arlene's phone, but were actually sent using spoofing applications. I felt dizzy. Mom, you framed me for adultery. Gloria's face was flushed with guilt and defiance. I was trying to protect David from a woman who wasn't committed to marriage. Protect him! I screamed, standing up so fast I knocked over my water glass. You destroyed my marriage with lies? David stepped closer. Arlene, I am so incredibly sorry. I should have talked to you directly instead of believing Gloria's stories. I should have trusted my wife over your mother. Marcus grabbed Gloria's arm. Mom, you deliberately sabotaged Arlene's marriage? Why would you do something so evil? It wasn't evil, Gloria insisted. I could see that Arlene was pulling away from the family. She was becoming too independent, too focused on her own life instead of helping with family responsibilities. The truth hit me like a lightning bolt. You wanted my marriage to fail so I would be financially and emotionally dependent on you again. I wanted you to prioritize family, Gloria corrected. David shook his head in disgust. Gloria, you told me that Arlene said she regretted getting married and wished she had never committed to settling down. I never said that, I whispered. I know you didn't, David replied. The investigator confirmed that none of those conversations ever happened. Gloria also told me that you were planning to move across the country for a new job without discussing it with me. What job? I asked, completely confused. A position in Seattle that supposedly offered twice your current salary, David explained. Gloria said you had already accepted it and were just waiting for the right time to tell me you were leaving. Jessica covered her mouth in horror. Mom, you made up an entire fake job offer. David nodded, complete with fabricated email correspondence and a fake offer letter. Gloria showed me documents that looked like they came from a software company in Washington state. I slumped back into my chair, overwhelmed by the systematic nature of the lies. How long did this go on? 6 months, David replied. From March until September, when I finally confronted you about the cheating allegations, and you had no idea what I was talking about. The memory of that terrible fight came flooding back. David had accused me of having affairs, and I had been so shocked and hurt that I couldn't even defend myself properly. I remember that night, I said quietly. You were so angry and you wouldn't believe me when I said I had never cheated. You said you had proof. Gloria's proof, David confirmed. And when you couldn't explain the evidence she had provided, I assumed you were lying to my face. Uncle Frank stood up and walked over to Gloria. You destroyed your daughter's marriage with deliberate, calculated lies? What kind of mother does that? The kind of mother who sees her daughter making mistakes, Gloria shot back. Arlene was 26 years old and already married. She should have been focused on starting a family and building a life here close to home. So you decided to destroy her chance at happiness? Dorothy said, her voice filled with disgust. David pulled out another document. There's more. After our divorce was finalized, I tried multiple times to contact Arlene to apologize once I realized something was wrong with Gloria's story. I never got any messages from you, I said. Because Gloria was intercepting them, David explained. I sent letters to your apartment, but Gloria told your landlord she was your emergency contact and convinced him to forward your mail to her address. My jaw dropped. She was stealing my mail. David nodded. I also called your work number several times, but Gloria had convinced your supervisor that you were dealing with stalking issues from your ex-husband and asked them to block my calls. Oh my God, I breathed. She told my boss you were stalking me. It gets worse, David continued. Gloria also contacted my family and told them that you had been verbally abusive during our marriage and that I was better off without you. I felt tears starting to flow down my cheeks. Your parents must hate me. They did, David admitted, until the private investigator provided them with proof that Gloria had lied about everything. My mother wants to call you and apologize, but she wasn't sure if you'd want to hear from her. The scope of Gloria's manipulation was breathtaking. She had poisoned my relationship not just with David, but with his entire family, and had actively prevented any possibility of reconciliation. Marcus turned to Gloria with an expression of pure disgust. Mom, you didn't just ruin Arlene's marriage. You isolated her from people who cared about her so that she would have to depend on you. I was trying to keep the family together, Gloria repeated, but her voice was weak and unconvincing. You were trying to control everyone's lives, Uncle Frank corrected. And you destroyed your daughter's chance at happiness in the process. David looked directly at me. Arlene, I know I can't undo the damage that was done. I know I should have trusted you more and questioned Gloria's stories. But I want you to know that I never stopped caring about you, and I've spent the last 6 months trying to figure out how to make this right. I wiped my eyes with my napkin. David, I don't know what to say. I thought you hated me. I could never hate you, he replied softly. I was hurt and confused and angry, but I never hated you. And now that I know the truth about what really happened, I hate myself for not seeing through Gloria's lies. The room fell silent as everyone processed the magnitude of what had been revealed. Gloria had not only stolen my money and my inheritance, but she had deliberately destroyed my marriage and isolated me from people who cared about me. All so that I would remain dependent on her and available to meet her financial and emotional needs. My phone suddenly buzzed with an incoming call, the ringtone cutting through the heavy silence that had settled over the room. I glanced at the screen and saw it was from my health insurance company. I should take this, I said quietly. It might be about the kidney donation pre-approval. Put it on speaker, David suggested. If it's about your medical situation, your family should hear this too. I hesitated for a moment, then accepted the call and activated the speaker function. Miss Henderson, this is Janet Morrison from customer service at United Healthcare. I'm calling regarding some urgent discrepancies we've discovered on your account. My stomach dropped. What kind of discrepancies? We've identified approximately $43,000 in medical claims that appear to be fraudulent. The claims span the past 18 months and include services that our investigation suggests were never provided to you. The room fell dead silent. Everyone was staring at my phone as if it might explode. What services? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Cosmetic dental procedures including porcelain veneers and dental implants performed at Luxury Dental Spa in the amount of $12,400. Multiple spa treatments listed as therapeutic massage therapy totaling $8,600. Dermatological procedures including Botox and chemical peels at Premium Skin Care Center for $6,200. I felt the blood drain from my face. I've never had any of those procedures. That's what we suspected, Janet continued. The investigation began when our fraud detection software flagged multiple high-dollar claims being processed with your member identification number, but showing different addresses for service locations than your registered home address. Marcus leaned closer to the phone. This is Arlene's brother. Are you saying someone has been using her insurance fraudulently? That appears to be the case, Janet confirmed. We need Miss Henderson to come in for an identity verification meeting and to file a formal fraud report. However, I need to warn you that until this investigation is resolved, your coverage may be suspended. Suspended? I asked in panic. But I need my coverage for the kidney donation surgery. I understand this is concerning, Janet replied sympathetically. But when fraud is suspected, we're required to freeze the account until we can verify the legitimate claims versus the fraudulent ones. Gloria suddenly knocked over her chair as she stood up abruptly, her purse spilling its contents across the floor. Several insurance cards scattered across the dining room, and Jessica immediately bent down to pick them up. Mom, why do you have so many insurance cards? Jessica asked, holding up multiple cards with different names. But I was staring at one card in particular. It had my name printed on it, but the photo was clearly Gloria's face. That's my insurance card, I said, pointing at the card in Jessica's hand. But that's Mom's photo. Janet's voice continued through the speakerphone. Miss Henderson, do you have access to your physical insurance card right now? I reached into my wallet and pulled out my legitimate insurance card. Yes, I have it. Can you confirm the member identification number? I read the number aloud, and Janet confirmed it matched the card being used for fraudulent claims. Dorothy picked up another card from the floor. This one says Gloria Henderson, but it has Arlene's member number. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Janet, I think my mother has been using a fake insurance card with my information to get medical procedures, I said into the phone. That would explain the discrepancy in service locations, Janet replied. We also have claims for prescription medications that don't match your medical history. Expensive pain medications, anti-anxiety drugs, and cosmetic dermatology prescriptions. Uncle Frank picked up more items from Gloria's spilled purse. Arlene, there are appointment cards here for medical spas, dental offices, and dermatology clinics. I examined the cards. All of them showed appointment dates within the past year, and all of them had my insurance information written on them in Gloria's handwriting. Mom, you've been getting cosmetic procedures using my insurance. I asked, my voice shaking with rage. Gloria backed toward the kitchen doorway. Those were legitimate medical treatments. I needed dental work because of medication side effects from the kidney disease. Porcelain veneers and Botox aren't kidney disease treatments, Marcus said angrily. Janet's voice came through the phone speaker again. Miss Henderson, we also need to discuss the impact this fraud may have on your future coverage. Depending on the outcome of our investigation, you may face difficulties obtaining health insurance in the future. I felt like I was going to faint. You mean this could prevent me from getting insurance even after the fraud is resolved? Fraudulent claims on an account can sometimes result in the account holder being flagged as high risk, Janet explained. Even though you're the victim in this situation, insurance companies share information about accounts with fraud histories. David stepped closer to me. Arlene, this could ruin your ability to get medical care for the rest of your life. The full implications were starting to sink in. Not only had Gloria committed fraud using my identity, but she had potentially destroyed my ability to obtain health insurance in the future. Janet, what do I need to do to protect myself? I asked. First, file a police report for identity theft. Second, we'll need you to come in with identification to verify your identity and sign sworn statements about which claims are legitimate. Third, you'll need to dispute the fraudulent charges and possibly testify if we pursue criminal charges. Criminal charges. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Uncle Frank found more evidence in Gloria's purse. There are credit cards here with Arlene's name, but different account numbers than what she would have. More identity theft, Dorothy observed grimly. I picked up one of the credit cards and immediately recognized it as a store card for an expensive department store where I had never shopped. Janet, this fraud may extend beyond just health insurance, I said into the phone. In that case, I'd recommend contacting the fraud departments of all 3 credit reporting agencies immediately, Janet advised. And you should probably consult with an attorney about protecting your legal rights. Gloria had moved to the kitchen doorway and was clearly preparing to flee the scene. Where do you think you're going? Marcus demanded. I need some air, Gloria said weakly. This is all getting blown out of proportion. Blown out of proportion, I shouted. You've committed identity theft, insurance fraud, and credit card fraud. You've potentially destroyed my ability to get health insurance or credit for the rest of my life. Jessica found receipts in Gloria's purse for luxury items that had clearly been purchased with fraudulent credit cards. Mom, there are receipts here for a $3,000 handbag and jewelry that costs more than most people make in a month. Those were gifts, Gloria protested. Gifts bought with stolen credit, Uncle Frank corrected. Janet's voice interrupted our confrontation. Miss Henderson, I need to inform you that we're required to report suspected insurance fraud to law enforcement. You should expect contact from investigators within the next few business days. The reality hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. Gloria was about to face criminal investigation for multiple types of fraud. Janet, will my coverage be restored once the fraud is proven? I asked desperately. That depends on the extent of the damage and whether we can recover the fraudulent payments, she replied. But I have to be honest with you, Miss Henderson. Even as the victim fraud cases can take months or even years to resolve completely. Months or years. I might not have health insurance for months or years, which meant no kidney donation surgery, no treatment for my stress-related health problems, and no financial protection if something serious happened to me. Gloria had not only stolen my money and destroyed my marriage, but she had potentially ruined my access to health care for the foreseeable future. All while I had been working myself into the ground to support her financially and medically. I stood up slowly, my hands surprisingly steady despite everything that had been revealed. The woman who had given birth to me, who I had sacrificed everything to support, had systematically destroyed every aspect of my life while positioning herself as the victim. I need to make a phone call, I announced to the room. Arlene, who are you calling? Marcus asked gently. The police? I replied, my voice calm and clear. My mother has committed multiple felonies, and it's time for her to face the consequences. Gloria's eyes widened in panic. Arlene, you can't be serious. I'm your mother. I'm sick. I need your help. I looked at her directly. You needed my help, and I gave it to you. I gave you my money, my time, my health, and my future. In return, you stole from me, lied about me, destroyed my marriage, and committed fraud in my name. I dialed 911 and waited for the dispatcher to answer. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report multiple cases of fraud and identity theft, I said clearly. The perpetrator is here with me, and I have substantial evidence of her crimes. Gloria tried to run toward the front door, but Uncle Frank blocked her path. "Ma'am, is this an ongoing emergency?" the dispatcher asked. "No immediate danger, but I have evidence of ongoing insurance fraud, credit card fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. I also have witnesses present." "Officers are being dispatched to your location. Please stay on the line." I gave the dispatcher the address and details about the types of fraud we had discovered. Within 10 minutes, 2 police officers arrived at the front door. Officer Martinez was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who listened patiently as I explained the situation. Officer Johnson took detailed notes and photographed all the evidence that had been scattered across the dining room table. "Ma'am, based on what you've described and the evidence we can see here, we have probable cause to arrest Mrs. Henderson for multiple fraud charges." Officer Martinez explained to me. Gloria collapsed into her chair sobbing. "Arlene, please don't let them arrest me. I'm sorry. I'll pay everything back." I looked at her calmly. "Mom, you've had years to make different choices. Every time I sent you money, every time I drove here for your dialysis appointments, every time I sacrificed something in my own life to help you, you had the opportunity to be honest with me." Officer Johnson approached Gloria with handcuffs. "Mrs. Henderson, you're under arrest for insurance fraud, identity theft, credit card fraud, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent." As they read Gloria her rights and led her toward the police car, she turned back to me one last time. "I did everything for this family," she said desperately. "No, Mom," I replied quietly. "You did everything to control this family. There's a difference." After the police car pulled away, the house felt eerily quiet. The 6 of us who remained, myself, Marcus, Jessica, Uncle Frank, Dorothy, and David, sat in the living room trying to process everything that had happened. "Arlene, I am so incredibly sorry," Jessica said, tears still streaming down her face. "I had no idea Mom was doing any of this." "I know you didn't," I replied. None of us knew how deep this went. Marcus leaned forward. "What happens now?" Dorothy, still in her paralegal mode, pulled out a legal pad. "First, we need to document everything for the criminal case and for civil restitution. Second, Marcus and Jessica need to sign legal documents transferring all stolen inheritance and business assets back to Arlene." "We'll do that immediately," Marcus said firmly, "and we want to pay back every penny that Mom stole with interest." "That could take years," I protested. "Then it takes years," Jessica replied. "You've been supporting Mom while she robbed you blind. It's time for us to step up and make this right." Uncle Frank had been quiet during this exchange, but now he spoke up. "There's something else we need to discuss. Frank at the auto shop called while the police were here. He's been keeping detailed financial records because he suspected something was wrong. Those records should help prove exactly how much money Gloria stole." David, who had been respectfully quiet during the family discussion, finally spoke. "Arlene, I know this isn't the time or place, but I want you to know that I'm here for whatever you need, even if it's just someone to talk to while you work through all of this." I looked at him carefully. "David, I appreciate that, but I can't just go back to the way things were before." "I'm not asking you to," he replied. "I'm asking if we can start over as friends and see what happens. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 people who used to care about each other trying to rebuild some kind of relationship." I considered his offer. "I think I'd like that." Over the following months, the criminal case against Gloria moved forward steadily. She ultimately pleaded guilty to multiple fraud charges and was sentenced to 18 months in prison plus 5 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay full restitution, which came to over $90,000 when all the fraud and stolen profits were calculated. Marcus and Jessica immediately transferred all inheritance assets back to me, including the house, the jewelry, and Dad's Mustang. They also set up a payment plan to reimburse me for all the money I had sent to Gloria over the years. The insurance fraud case was resolved after 6 months of investigation. My coverage was fully restored, and the fraudulent charges were removed from my record. I was cleared to proceed with kidney donation surgery, but I decided instead to donate to a stranger on the waiting list rather than to Gloria. Frank provided detailed financial records that helped recover my business profits with interest. The auto shop's lawyer also helped me secure my rightful ownership percentage and ensured that I would receive all future profit distributions directly. David and I started meeting for coffee once a week, just talking and getting to know each other again. There was no rush to redefine our relationship, but there was a foundation of mutual respect and understanding that felt healthier than what we'd had before. I used some of the recovered money to move into a beautiful one-bedroom apartment with a real kitchen and enough space for all of Dad's tools, which I set up in the spare room. I also reduced my work hours to a more sustainable 40 hours per week and started taking evening classes in automotive restoration. 6 months after Gloria's arrest, I hosted my own Thanksgiving dinner. Marcus and Jessica came with their families. Uncle Frank and Dorothy brought homemade pie, and David brought his parents, who apologized profusely for believing Gloria's lies about me. As we sat around my new dining room table, I realized something profound. For the first time in years, I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about my well-being rather than what I could provide for them. During dinner, Jessica's 5-year-old daughter asked me why I looked so happy. "Because I'm surrounded by people who love me for who I am, not for what I can do for them," I told her. Marcus raised his glass. "To Arlene for having the courage to stand up for herself and teach all of us what real family means." As everyone toasted, I felt a deep sense of peace that I hadn't experienced in years. Gloria had taught me an important lesson, though, probably not the one she intended. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and your family is to refuse to enable destructive behavior, even when that behavior comes from someone you love. True family isn't about blindly supporting each other regardless of the consequences. True family means holding each other accountable, treating each other with respect, and building relationships based on honesty and mutual care. I learned that standing up for myself wasn't selfish or disloyal. It was necessary for my survival and my sanity. And sometimes setting firm boundaries is the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved. The woman who had once told me I didn't deserve a seat at her table had forgotten something crucial. I was the one who had been paying for the table, the food, and the roof over her head. But more importantly, I had been bringing love, sacrifice, and genuine care to that table every single day. Now I had my own table surrounded by people who valued my presence not for what I could provide, but for who I was as a person. And that made all the difference in the world. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone you loved was taking advantage of your generosity? How did you find the strength to set boundaries and protect yourself? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life family stories. And please share this with anyone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for yourself, even against family members. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that you deserve to be treated with respect and kindness by everyone in your life, especially those closest to you.